on to just a few things about the webinar. Everyone is on mute right now, so we don't have any feedback or things like that. But if you have any questions, we will have a question and answer session at the end of the webinar. But also, if you type in questions, I'll be monitoring those questions, and I can always, if it's topical at that point to what Dennis is talking about, certainly stop and interrupt Dennis to have those questions go in. So if you have any questions throughout the webinar on whatever Dennis is speaking on at that point, feel free to just type it on in, and I'll just pause and interject those questions as we go. There will be a replay, and slides for this are available. If you'd like to, you can just send us an email. We'll get you an email address to send that to. Also, the session is being recorded, so we will certainly have that available online as well. Oops. So today's speaker we've got is Dennis Walsek, who is I like to call him a serial CIO. He's been both a CIO at multiple locations and also a consultant to CIOs. He has been had major assignments, as you can see, as head of IT, Sara Lee, DSC Logistics, USF Logistics, all companies that certainly have issues with backup and disaster recovery, like many companies do. And obviously experience as the head of that, has a unique view of what the person in that particular office of CIO is looking for from both what's being looked to him from a CEO and also from what's being looked at, what he's looking for from the people that work with and for him. Dennis is also, as you can see, served on numerous company boards and has been on many startup companies and has also done work with the University of Nevada. The agenda for today is, again, CIO's role and responsibilities in regards to disaster recovery planning, the data evolution and the relationship as that pertains to that topic, how data is key, that drives the components of when you're trying to put a plan together, again, what the concerns and how to rectify those concerns for the CIO, and the business pressures and compliance that go along with and I believe politics as well that go along with putting the plan together, and what to look for in the backup and recovery capabilities of the solution that you're looking at. So with no further ado, I will again introduce Dennis Walsek, and I'm going to hand that over to Dennis to take over. Dennis, you there?
Can you hear me?
Yep, you're
Can you
good.
hear me now? All right.
Yeah, unmuted. Yeah.
And on the screen, do you see the CIO role and responsibility?
We do.
Okay, I'm going to switch over right to the presentation portion of it. It'll switch. There we go. Good morning, everyone. What I'm trying to do today, or what we'll try and do, is really let you know what the CIO thinks about what goes into some of these things, and when you look at DRP and the role that data plays. And quite frankly, the CIO's job is really preparing for that disaster, and so the company, simply so the company can continue operating. But in that particular regard, there's a lot of actions, a number of actions that follow, and one is you truly have to identify the key corporate functions and the interactions with when you do a business impact analysis. And with the BIA, you're trying to, quite frankly, understand what's the components of the various business functions that interface or interact, and you have to identify the critical systems that are necessary to keep the business going. Now, you could have, pick a number, 5,000 applications. There might only be 1,000 or even 100, depends on your business, that are really critical to the business, but you have to understand that. The other thing you have to truly do is, and this is where it always gets interesting, we all know you have to have a strategy. You have to, for the business plan, the recovery plan. But you really have to, and this is where the CIO comes in and has problems. You have to cost justify these things. And we'll get into that a little later. You have to truly, when you sit in front of everyone, there's risk and cost, and those things are balanced quite often. So then obviously you have to implement the plan, and implementing the plan itself can be interesting. And the, let's say, the cooperation you might get from various departments who are busy, and they don't see this as a very big impact on them until something happens. And once you do have the plan implemented, we talk about scheduling, periodic scheduling and testing of that particular plan, but that unto itself sounds quite simple. But meanwhile, back at the ranch here, everyone's busy in IT. They're doing everything they need to do, and finding the time to test the plan, properly test the plan, quite frankly, can become just very difficult. So in the area of the evolution of data and how it's used, in the past, data has been backed up and recovered from the 70s, late 70s and 80s going forward. You know, we've had local area LANs, local area networks, FTP, file transfer protocols, NAS, network attached storage we've done. And today we're into the SAN environment, and then we're doing virtualization, and everything is mixed and matched, and it does lead to very difficult environment to control. Data once was so huge, quite frankly. It was a historical record that we kept, and we looked at what went on in the past. And but the problem we have today is, even though data was just a reporting tool, today's the data is quite important for real-time operational capabilities in today's environment, which then leads us to what happens with the changes to the RTO, or the recovery time objective, which today is, quite frankly, as you people probably know, if you ask a business unit how much time they can be down, assuming it's not accounting, who works in the past very often, it's going to be zero or very close to it. So there's this need to access the data, and that need to access the data is something that is going to become worse. As we all know, there's more mobile systems being built, more collaborative systems, more social networks, which we're trying to use for improving productivity even within the companies, much less for getting marketing itself. We're also trying to use it within other areas of the company, and that access is going to be needed more often than, much more readily and often than today. So today, the data, where does it reside? More and more of that data sits on a customer and partner-facing application. So in today's environment, we're not just looking at ourselves. We're looking at our outsiders, or our partners, or our customers, who can't tolerate an outage at all on any of these applications, any more than, as it says here, than your employees can. So, and our friends at Gartner, who I don't always agree with, had some interesting negative discussions with them, but this particular survey, I think I would agree with, because what has been going on, we've seen such a growth in data, which we all know. Then we've seen big challenges of expanding hardware and building new data centers, and all these items refer to that little item that's the biggest pain in CIOs we're in, this cost and containing the costs. So, now, why is data a key that drives all these components? And as we know, data, or at least from my point of view, data is a foundation that you need to run your business. But foundation is the word that I look at very, very deeply. And if this data is corrupt, it's not up to date, and we can't recover it quickly, needless to say, we have a problem. Now, we spend a lot of time doing business continuity planning, business impact analysis, and doing the disaster recovery plan, and Within the BIA, the impact analysis, we try and figure out what our RTO is, recovery time objective. But if data fails, which sits really at the bottom of this whole stack, if the data is not good, I've got a real problem, because I can go out, if I've got enough money and the business is really in trouble, believe me, when you get in trouble, money comes. But if the business is really in trouble, what will happen is I can find anyone to give me hardware set up tomorrow. I'll build it. I can find anyone to give me, for the right amount of money, the hardware I need. I can find anyone, I can talk to my software vendors, the application vendors, all the vendors that have software to help me. If I pay them enough or get the right consultants, I can get that information in place. But I'm responsible for the data, and if we don't have the right data, and we're not, we backed it up incorrectly, the data is corrupt, no one can get the right data for me. No matter how much money I pay, I can't find that data. So,
Dennis?
Yes.
This is Mike. We do have a question on that point, and I think it's a real strong one. From your perspective, whether it's at the CIO level or even above the CIO level, the question is, how do you get funds for something that hasn't happened yet? Like you mentioned, when something happens, it's easy to get funds, but how do you get funds to prep for that when people probably haven't experienced the loss at that point?
Let me, and I can tell you I won't name the company because, but this goes back further on my resume, so you can judge who it might be. When times get tight, I've had companies come, or the CEO and CFO come to me and say, well, we're going to cut out the disaster recovery. Believe me, that was not when Sarbanes-Oxley required stock companies to have it. So, but what you really need to do is develop an understanding of your costs. What's the average value of your transaction? How many? You have to go through some details. You have to understand the number of transactions per hour, how many per day. Is there a manual backup that you use right now that captures some of this versus automated? If there's manual, what's the cost of recovering that data? What's the impact of a manual or a less effective recovery that won't get you to that RTO point that they want? How long is it going to take you to catch up? And then I think what you have to also say, knowing all those and more, pieces of information, then you have to ask yourself, what does 1 hour, 1 day, 1 month, 1 week, whatever, mean to the business and lost revenue? What happened with compensation to people? What's the impact on our people and our customers? And you need to quantify all those numbers. Now that's not easy.
So the short answer is, Dennis, the short answer then it's just a matter of putting together the numbers and a little bit of fear, uncertainty, and doubt.
Yeah, but you have to understand what's the effect on the business.
What's the risk that this will happen? I think a large point that one needs to understand. Here. I'm trying to adjust this microphone.
Sound is what I'm getting. Can you still hear me, Mike? Can you hear me?
Yes, Dennis, we can hear you.
Okay, sorry. What you really have to do on the cost issue is you have to understand the cost and you have to understand the risk, but you have to relate this back to not only the company, what they're doing, but you have to relate back to what we do within the IT department and how soon and how quickly. And if there's big enough numbers, you certainly will justify. Justifying this is a very difficult thing to do because, as everyone said, it's not happening. But the other thing that's taking place today with virtualization and a lot of the cloud we're not in the same situation where we're going to spend that cost like I used to do with having a whole data center ready and all that. There's a lot of alternatives today. So if you explore the marketplace today, I think you'll find that we're nowhere near the cost it used to be 20 years ago. Probably, I would even say 1/10 of the cost. So it's very doable in today's environment. Okay, Mike?
Okay, I think that answers the question.
Okay. Again, as we look at the data management costs, we talked about that. And what we're talking about here, just so you understand where the CIO is coming from, there's a lot of pressures that we all have pressures in that job, so I'm not looking for anyone to talk about this any that need help. But the pressures themselves are really political, and it's trying to satisfy various departments and always looking at an RTO that everyone thinks should be zero. And also, when you do a business impact analysis, you have to look at, again, everyone's going to say that can't be done, but you're going to have to look at what is the most important things that drive money into the company coffers. And that, again, is not everyone has to be up, and that you just got to reduce the risk to the business, and cash flow is a big risk without that. And, then we come to compliance. Depending on your business and your company, there's mandates that are put out there. We all know about HIPAA. If you're a SPAC company, Sarbanes-Oxley plays a big deal. And those are, only two of the mandates that are out there. If you're a hospital, or if you're a pharmaceutical company, I mean, go down the list, an oil company, everyone has certain mandates they have to be in compliance with nowadays if they're a stock company. So, and, that always leads to fear of non-compliance fines, and every VP or even the CFO and CEO who sign off on compliance statements like CIOs do also want to make sure we're not the one who initiates those fines.
Hey, Dennis?
Yes?
Your clarity is pretty good, but your volume is pretty low. Is it possible you might be able to speak closer to your mic?
Yeah, I was, but they have, my thing here is telling me I was too loud.
You're pretty good right there. Thanks.
Okay, fine, thank you. So, let's advance here. And I was going to talk about driving down cost here, and we will talk about it. I gave you on the justification side a little bit more earlier than I wanted to, but I think when we talk about driving down cost nowadays, most organizations, or many, are very homogeneous, and they have both virtual and physical environments, and there's very few that are 100% virtualized today. There could be maybe a few out there that sites who have 2 or possibly 3 hypervisors and platforms and trying to protect various and sundry things. But those things can be somewhat dangerous, but they're certainly cost ineffective, because we're talking about requiring multiple protection schemes that are expensive to run. They're hard to administer, generally. They jeopardize, because they are hard to administer and you have a multiple of them, it might take longer to get through, which also jeopardizes the disaster recovery. So multiple backup schemes invariably cost a lot of money to run, and I think we have to, that's one of the keys that we'll talk about later. You have to get out of that environment. But there are new solutions out there, and quite frankly, these new solutions are proven. They eliminate multiple unlinked backup and recovery schemes, and they work well, and you really got to look for those. And I think one of the big things from a CIO, from any executive point of view, when you look around today, I can tell you how we've tried to look at a single pane of management view, and let's just call it a dashboard. I've gone into environments, and what I require, and I think all executives want, I want a single view. I want one dashboard, and I've done this with, let's say, application development. I have a single dashboard. I can go in, I can see what's going on with all projects, and that's all I want. I want a single view. I want to be educated at a high level. Here we want a single pane of view or a dashboard for a management view, but this also is used by you people running these operations. And this is also going to simplify your life.
And again, it does simplify it. It improves the ability to recover that data loss. And I truly believe this will lead to reduced cost and reduced complexity. And that's what we try and eliminate for, again, cost situation and complexity reduction to make sure we get this done quickly. So,
Dennis, I'm kind of here. I'm getting some response from people just saying you're a little too far away from the mic again.
okay. Do I need to go back on that?
Yeah, that's way better.
Do I need to go back on that issue? Can anyone?
No, I think they heard. I think we're okay. I just think that.
I understand. I understand.
Yeah.
Anyways, now we look at the CIO issue of business pressures and compliance, and we've gone through this. And I guess what I'm saying here is look for some software out there, things that are labeled best practices. Look for things that can get you to that zero RTO, because you're going to need that. Look for the installation of this type of software and methodologies that make sure they're proven, though. And they've got to, depending on your current environment, I believe, again, if it's like most environments that are heterogeneous, you're going to reduce and contain cost once you move into the new direction. And all this leads to one of the big issues that we always talk about in with disaster recovery is the risk to the business, and that's what we need to do, is to reduce that risk. So what I would say, and based on my experience, what I would certainly look for when you look for new software is you certainly want to look for some disk image backup that's going to really allow you to totally back up back up the complete systems. Should be including all files and folders and settings and etc. And you should be able to do this in one pass with today's software, and you shouldn't have to take your servers offline. The next thing when we talk about application awareness, if you're backing up Microsoft Exchange servers or an SQL server-based application that requires application awareness, you need to recover a usable application with usable data. Make sure you can do that. And obviously just simply support for VMware backups and Hyper-V backups in today's environment, because you may not be on the virtualization side yet, but you will be. Everyone knows you will be. So the data deduplication and file compression, they're really two keys to creating a faster and more frequent and more smaller backups. And again, as we talk about faster, we relate to that RTO time being zero, or trying to get to zero. And we also talk to cost, because if it's faster and more frequent and it's smaller, and we're eliminating duplicated data, we're going to have less cost out there. And on the guaranteed recoveries, you got to ensure that the backup process is robust enough to recover the files, and not only the files, as well as the complete machine and all the applications that are on it. And scalability, I think we all know scalability is something to try and look for, but it has to work well in a multi-sized or environment. And when we talk about a strong migration utility, you really need to be able to move smoothly from the physical to the virtual, and the virtual to virtual, and eventually, or maybe real soon, right to a cloud platform. So these are the things I would look for. I think I'm not the technician, but I understand what I think these things contribute toward my goals as a CIO, and how these things in detail work. I'm sure a lot of you guys know that better than me, but when I sit there and someone on my staff comes to me and wants to talk about these things, or if I'm doing a consulting job, which I just did for a backup and recovery situation, getting the data, looking at the backup and recovery of the data itself is one very important issue. So anyways, that's all I have, and I thank everyone. Mike?
Okay, thanks, Dennis. Again, everyone, I hope everyone got some value out of this. I don't see any more questions at this point. Unless you've got other questions, you feel free to send those to me right now, and we'll start going over. We can go over a few of those. Also, I want to take this time to also let people know if you are, for the people on the webinar that are local to the Chicago area, Black Diamond is also doing a basketball, beer, and backup event on Friday, a live event in the city. If you are interested in attending, you probably already received it. You may have already received an invite for it, but we can certainly send you another invite for you to sign up for it. All you have to do is send an email to sales@bdtcorp.com or to the rep that you deal with at Black Diamond, and we're happy to get you an invite for that and love to see you guys live there. It's pretty much an excuse to get to work on Friday when the NCAA tournament starts and watch a little basketball, and we'll talk a little bit about backup as well. We have actually one of our partners will be there for that. Aperture is a backup provider that we'll have there. So see their small presentation on their product and also be able to just kind of enjoy a nice afternoon on Friday. Dennis, the only other question I see here is very simple. It's kind of similar to the other one, which again is kind of, how do you, from your perspective, how does someone actually, when they're putting this stuff together, the question is, how does somebody gather, momentum to show management that this is really what has to happen?
Well, I think it's to start with, when you say management, you're talking about the CIO or management further up in general, I guess would be one of my questions. But I'm going to assume it's further up and then also secondly the CIO. First of all, it's the CIO's job because he is the person who's best positioned to, within the whole corporation, to understand the risk and rewards of proper backup and proper disaster recovery plan. And I think it's his responsibility to, first of all, garner the support at his level. People have to understand what could happen or could not happen if these plans are not put in place. I think the first thing you could do, so that's at that level. I think if you're trying to convince the CIO, first of all, I think he realizes he needs one. There's no doubt about that, but he's probably in a political bind that he can't get the money. So I think you have to take this in steps. Before you go and move into a total disaster recovery plan, one could start at the base, because you could present this as we talked about how data is the key, and if we don't have the data, no one's going to help us. No one can help us replace that data if it's corrupt or bad or lost or missing. The other parts, as I mentioned, infrastructure, software, all those things you can get from if you got enough money to throw at different vendors. They can. It's amazing what can happen when you overpay for everything. So all those other pieces we can put together, but the data is the key. And I think if you only do the backup and recovery of backup, much less the whole plan, that's at least the biggest part is in place that no one else can get for you. So that's where I would start. And you have to look at, again, if this data is not there, you got to go through this cost, as I talked about, looking at the, basically I won't go through what trying to go to transaction level, but what is the lost revenue? How much is not coming in, and those type things at a higher level. So I would go after this part first, and then I would have a strategic, and that's what you really need, a strategic plan that says, this is the part no one can get for us. We do this first, then we can move into the other sections based on, let's say, political environment, or I shouldn't say political, I'm too political at times, obviously, here, based on the current environment within the company and available funds. So I would use that type of strategy.
Okay, thanks. I don't see any other questions. If anyone else has any other questions, can you just type them in real quickly? If not, I guess we'll just adjourn. I don't see any other questions coming in. So, Dennis, thank you for your time. I hope everyone did find this to be beneficial and get some information about it. And again, we can have this, if you'd like a copy of this, we could just get us an email at sales@bdtcorp.com. Also, we'll put it online as well. Thanks again, and have a great day.